Well, hello, everyone. Very good to see you. Again, I'm Anne-Marie Green alongside Vladimir Duthiers. We have a lot going on, but you know what has more going on right now? Steve Bannon, Vlad.
That's exactly right, Anne-Marie. Steve Bannon, the former White House aide to President Trump, is one step closer to being held in contempt of Congress. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol insurrection voted unanimously last night to recommend the move. Bannon has been ignoring the committee's subpoenas as it probes the attack. The full House is set to vote on the measure tomorrow. If it is passed, the Justice Department would then decide whether to go forward with prosecution. Nikole Killion has been following the story, and she is here with us now to discuss. So, Nikole, how likely is the measure to pass the full House vote tomorrow? And if it does, what are we expecting to hear from Merrick Garland and Justice Department?
Well, as far as the vote, we expect it'll pass, but this will likely be along party lines if it does. Democrats seem pretty confident that they will have the votes, but, you know, Republicans are unlikely to support this measure and could potentially even throw some procedural hurdles in the mix, you know, if they want to make a point about the vote. But that being said, you know, at the end of the day, once this does clear the House, it would be referred to the Justice Department, first to the U.S. Attorney's Office, you know, which will ultimately refer to the, you know, higher ups in the Justice Department to decide whether or not Mr. Bannon should be criminally charged. And if he does, that carries a potential penalty of up to a year in jail and a $100,000 fine.
That's a pretty hefty penalty, but it's not something that's happened in a long time. I mean, the last time something like this happened was, I think, during the Reagan administration. But I imagine that the panel is trying to set some sort of precedent and a bit of a warning to the others that have worked within the Trump administration that they would like to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is without a doubt a warning shot to other witnesses out there that if they don't cooperate with this panel, that they could face similar consequences. And the committee made that clear. They also would not make clear if they do intend to, you know, consider other witnesses for contempt. At this point, they seem to suggest that some of the other folks that they have subpoenaed have been engaging and cooperating with the committee. But they do want to send a very clear message by this vote last night, not to mess with them, that they're not playing, that, you know, they will take action for those who defy their subpoena orders.
Yesterday, Nikole, you had an opportunity to speak with Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, who is on the panel. What did he tell you?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, in terms of next steps with the Justice Department, I asked him how quickly he expects the Justice Department to move, and he said that he didn't really want to get into that, and that the committee has not really been, you know, consulting with the Justice Department, if you will. That is something that the chairman, Benny Thompson, also said on another network, that he hasn't communicated with the Justice Department, but hopes that they can move expeditiously on this. But, you know, look, in committee member Raskin's view, who, by the way, was a former impeachment manager, the lead impeachment manager of the last impeachment trial, you know, his whole point is that, you know, these claims of executive privilege that Steve Bannon is purporting and that his attorneys are purporting, he just feels it is utterly ridiculous. You know, he says that, you know, because Mr. Bannon, of course, worked for the White House some time ago, that, you know, in the run-up to January 6th, he was a private citizen. He was not working in an official White House capacity. Those privileges simply don't apply. And that is something, too, that the committee reiterated last night, that they don't believe that Bannon has any legal standing and that he is isolating himself by defying these subpoena orders.
So the committee also, you know, subpoenaed a number of other former Trump administration members. Who's cooperating? Who's not? What do we know? What do we know about that?
Well, in terms of some of the other witnesses who have been subpoenaed, they include the likes of former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Kash Patel, who worked for the Defense Department and the acting defense secretary at the time, and also Dan Scavino, who ran a lot of the former president's communications, especially his digital communications. And so, again, according to committee member Raskin, as well as other members of the panel, they seem to suggest that these folks are engaging. They won't really go into detail on what engaging packaging means, what that looks like. But one point to note is that all of these individuals, just like Steve Bannon, were due to appear for depositions last week, and those depositions have since been postponed. Now, we've been told that, these will be short postponements, but again, we haven't really gotten any timetable as to when they ultimately will be expected to appear. And of course, all these individuals also had to turn over documents to the committee as well about what they knew, what types of conversations they may have had with the former president in the run-up to January 6th.
So, Nikole, former President Trump has filed a lawsuit himself against the Select Committee to try and block the release of documents relating to January 6th. He's also directing his allies not to comply with the investigation. How has the committee responded?
Well, the interesting thing that Congressman Raskin noted is that the former president hasn't even really reached out to the committee itself, which is notable. But as you mentioned, he has warned, and his legal team, more specifically, has warned all of these witnesses, whether it's Steve Bannon, Mark Meadows, and the like, not to produce any documents and not to testify, again, based on what they believe is executive privilege. And so, as far as this latest lawsuit from the president in terms of trying to block the release of documents, keep in mind the committee has asked the National Archives and a host of federal agencies to turn over documents, again, about, whether that's call logs, visitor logs, any types of video and communication that might have occurred, again, in the run-up to January 6th and on the 6th itself. And so those are the kinds of documents that the committee is seeking from the archives, and those are the records that former President Trump is now trying to block. Now, we do know that the Biden administration, the current White House, has waived executive privilege and they don't think that it is justified in this instance. So this will be something that will have to play out in the courts. But for now, the committee does not feel that that will impede their investigation. And Congressman Raskin told me he even thinks they'll be able to still get those documents within a matter of weeks.
All right, Nikole Killion on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much, Nikole.
Absolutely.